So the different components of the package are obviously, headline numbers base, but it's a multiplier for bonus, for any kind of severance. So you want to get that right because it could determine how much you're earning in the bonus comp. On bonus, things to understand, what does on target mean? Is it based on last year's plan? Is it based on a stretch plan? Is it a number the comp committee have come up with that's not been achieved for 3 years? These are all the questions that you should be asking. And on that as well, with some of these founder-led businesses, quite often the bonus plan is not, it's not structured, it's not really defined, it's not based on quantitative data. And we'll have founders come to us, certainly if it's the first CFO hire, and they'll say, we have got a bonus plan, but it's a bit like finger in the air. We had a great year, let's pay out some bonuses. And part of the remit for the CFO coming in is to look at formalizing that plan. So I guess it's just being comfortable with there will be a bonus, but it might not be the finished article, and you'll have some involvement in that, which I guess is great because you can put together a plan that makes sense. Equity and long-term incentives obviously takes various options: stock, RSUs, SARs. I guess the thing to think about here is understanding the mechanics of each of the levers with an equity plan. I'm going to go into a bit more detail on the next slide on that. Sign on and buyout, a lot of CFOs could potentially be 3 years into a 5-year hold with a PE firm. They've got equity that vests in 5 years. They're going to be walking away from a pot of money. Have the number in mind and know what that number is, because you can bring that to the negotiation. And quite often a company will say, hey, let's compensate for what you're walking away from because our timing is such that we need you now. We can't wait. And they can put together something compelling to compensate for what you're losing out on. Benefits and perks obviously speaks for itself: medical, ESOP participation if it's employee owned, 401k, and then the protections. And this is something in my experience that candidates don't do a lot of negotiating on. No one wants to go into a new position thinking, hey, what happens if it doesn't work out? And it might not work out through no fault of your own. How are you protected in that scenario? Certainly, PE-backed businesses, you're going in and there's a 2-year time frame for you to sell the business. What happens when there's a change of ownership? It's understanding what that mechanism looks like.